Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's horizon, watching the stars through the main window. His crew had been exploring this part of space for 3 months. They were looking for new worlds that humans could visit someday. Jake never expected to find other intelligent life out here. "Captain, we're getting a strange signal," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She was the ship's communication officer. "It's not like anything we've seen before." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of signal?" "It's coming from multiple sources. The pattern suggests it's some kind of language, but it's not human." Amy played the signal through the speakers. Strange sounds filled the bridge. Dr. Carl Bennett, the ship's science officer, looked up from his computer. "Captain, I think we just found proof that we're not alone in the universe." Jake felt his heart beat faster. This was the moment every explorer dreamed of. "Can you figure out what they're saying?" "Give me some time," Amy said. "The computer is trying to find patterns in the language." 3 hours later, Amy had made progress. "Captain, I think I can send a basic message. It won't be perfect, but they should understand that we're trying to communicate." "Do it," Jake said. Amy sent a simple message explaining that they were peaceful explorers from Earth. They waited. Then the answer came back. "Captain," Amy said, her voice shaking with excitement, "they want to meet us. They're sending coordinates to a place called Nexus Prime." 2 weeks later, Jake found himself on a shuttle heading down to an alien world. With him was Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, who had flown out from Earth to handle first contact. Dr. Bennett was also there, along with Marine Sergeant Tony Martinez for protection. Nexus Prime was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The buildings were tall and strange, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. Ships of many different shapes filled the sky. This was clearly a place where many different species lived and worked together. "Remember," Elena said as their shuttle landed, "we represent all of humanity today. Let's make a good impression." The first alien they met was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. "I am Ambassador Tyshel of the Zelani people," it said in perfect English. "Welcome to Nexus Prime. We are excited to meet the humans of Earth." Jake was amazed. "You learned our language so quickly." "We have been listening to your radio signals for many years," Tyshel explained. "We wanted thee ready when we finally met." They were taken to a large building in the center of Vince, the city. Inside, representatives from 12 different alien species waited for them. Jake looked around in wonder. Some aliens looked almost human, while others were so strange he couldn't figure out how they moved or breathed. "This is the Galactic Council," Tyshel explained. "We have kept peace in this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Today, we consider adding humanity to our group." Elena stepped forward. "We are honored by this opportunity. Humanity comes in peace. We want to learn from you and share what we know." An alien that looked like a walking tree spoke up. "I am Scholar Quinder of the Vorthik. We are curious about your species. Your radio signals suggest you are very young compared to us. How old is your civilization?" Dr. Bennett answered. "We've had cities for about 10,000 years. We've been in space for less than 500 years. The aliens looked at each other in surprise. "So young," one of them said. "Yet you have traveled so far from your home world." "Humans are good at exploring," Jake said. "We like to see what's on the other side of every mountain and beyond every star." A large armored alien with red skin stepped forward. "I am Senior, Counselor Vextar of the Krex Empire. Tell us about your history, humans. How did you develop so quickly?" Elena smiled. "We've had challenges. Wars, natural disasters, diseases. But every time something tried to stop us, we found a way to survive and grow stronger." "Wars?" Tyshel asked. "You fight among yourselves?" "We used to," Elena said. But we learned that working together is better than fighting. That's why we formed the United Earth Government. Sergeant Martinez spoke up. We still remember how to fight, though. Sometimes you need to protect what you love. The aliens looked uncomfortable. Jake noticed them exchanging glances. What kind of weapons do you have? Vexstar asked. We have nuclear weapons, but we don't use them anymore, Elena said. We also have advanced military ships and soldiers, like Sergeant Martinez here. You speak of war like it's normal, another alien said. This one looked like it was made of energy rather than solid matter. Most species avoid conflict. Dr. Bennett tried to explain. On Earth, we had to compete for resources. Different groups of humans fought over food, water, and land. This made us good at solving problems and adapting to change. But you're peaceful now? Tyso asked. Yes, Elena said. We believe in peace. But we also believe in being ready to defend ourselves and our friends. The meeting continued for hours. The aliens asked many questions about human culture, technology, and history. Jake noticed that they seemed particularly interested in how humans handled conflict and danger. Finally, Vexstar spoke to the other council members in a language the humans couldn't understand. After a long discussion, he turned back to the human delegation. The council has decided to offer humanity probationary membership, he said. You will be allowed to trade with us and visit our worlds. In 1 year, we will decide if you can become full members. Helena smiled. We accept, and we're grateful for this chance. As the meeting ended, Jake overheard Vexstar talking quietly to another council member. Monitor the humans closely, the Krex leader said. Something about their evolutionary path feels different. They talk about war and survival like other species talk about art and music. Jake pretended not to hear, but the words stayed with him. As they flew back to their ship, he wondered what the alien had meant. What was different about humans? And why did that difference seem to worry the council? The next morning, Jake sent a message back to Earth. First contact successful. We've been invited to join something called the Galactic Council, but I think they're studying us as much as we're studying them. He didn't know it yet, but V-Star's warning would prove more important than anyone could imagine. 6 months had passed since humans joined the Galactic Council. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster was now captain of her own ship, the UES Guardian. She was leading a routine patrol near the mining world of Kythera when everything changed. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from Kythera, said Communications Officer Pete Hughes. It's hard to make out, but it sounds like they're under attack. Amy moved to the main display. Put it on screen. The image that appeared made her blood run cold. Kythera was a peaceful mining world where families lived and worked together. Now she could see explosions on the surface and strange ships in orbit around the planet. Those aren't council ships, said Science Officer Lisa Chong. I've never seen anything like them. The ships were black and covered in spikes. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, bending and twisting like living things. As Amy watched, one of the ships fired a beam at the planet's surface. Where the beam hit, everything seemed to disappear. Captain, Pete said, I'm getting reports from other systems. These things are attacking worlds all across the sector. The Council is calling them Ravagers. Amy had heard stories about the Ravagers. They were supposed to be a myth, something that happened long ago. Ancient records spoke of creatures that ate entire civilizations, but most people thought they were just scary stories. How many ships do we have in the area? Amy asked. Just U.S., Pete replied. The Council fleet is 3 days away. Amy looked at the display again. The Ravagers were destroying the mining stations on Kythera. She could see escape pods trying to get away from the planet, but the alien ships were hunting them down. Captain, Lisa said. We should follow Council protocol. We're supposed to observe and report, then wait for the main fleet. Amy stared. At the screen, thousands of people were dying down there. Men, women, and children who had never hurt anyone. The Council protocol made sense from a military standpoint, but Amy couldn't just watch innocent people die. No, she said. We're going. Captain, there are 12 enemy ships and only one of us, Pete said. This isn't a fight we can win. Amy smiled grimly. Maybe we can't win, but we can buy time for those people to escape. Besides, I have an idea. She activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Amy Foster to all crew. We're going to engage the Ravagers. I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. But there are families down there who need our help. The response came back immediately from every station. Aye, Captain. Amy turned to her tactical officer. Jim, what do we know about those ships? Lieutenant Jim Walker studied his readings. They're big and heavily armed, but they move strangely. It's like they're not following normal physics. What about the planet? Amy asked Lisa. Kythera is mostly a mining world. The gravity is lighter than Earth, and there are lots of tunnels and caves from the mining operations. Amy's mind was already working on a plan. Jim, can you calculate the exact gravity field around Kythera? Yes, Captain, but why? Because we're going to use the planet as a weapon. The Guardian dropped out of hyperspace near Kythera, just as 3 Ravager ships were moving to attack a group of escape pods. Amy didn't hesitate. Fire all weapons, she ordered. The human ship's lasers struck the nearest Ravager. The alien ship spun around, clearly surprised by the attack. Amy could see why the Council had trouble fighting these things. The Ravager ship seemed to repair itself, even as she watched. They're adapting to our weapons, Jim reported. Then we'll have to try something else, Amy said. Take us into the planet's gravity well. Pete looked confused. Captain, that's extremely dangerous. Trust me, Amy said. The Guardian dove toward Kythera, with 3 Ravager ships following. Amy waited until they were deep in the planet's gravity field. Then she gave the order. Release all cargo containers and mining equipment. Set them to explode on my signal. The ship's cargo bay opened, and dozens of containers floated out. To the Ravagers, they probably looked like debris from a damaged ship. The alien ships moved closer, trying to finish off what they thought was a helpless enemy. Now, Amy said. Containers exploded, but that wasn't the real attack. Amy had positioned them so that the explosions would push chunks of metal and rock into a specific pattern. The debris, accelerated by Kythera's gravity, slammed into the Ravager ships like bullets. 2 of the alien ships were destroyed instantly. The third was badly damaged and retreated. Captain, Pete said in amazement, how did you know that would work? Amy grinned. I didn't, but humans are good at improvising. The Guardian landed near the main mining complex, where hundreds of people were trapped underground. Amy led a team down to the surface, including Marine Sergeant Tony Martinez and a squad of soldiers. The mining tunnels were dark and full of smoke. Amy could hear the sound of Ravager ships attacking the surface above them. The aliens were trying to dig the humans out. Sergeant Martinez, Amy said, can your people hold them off? Tony nodded. We'll find a way, Captain. These tunnels remind me of the cave systems we trained in on Mars. Amy was impressed by how quickly the Marines adapted. They used the mining equipment as weapons, turning drilling machines into guns and explosive charges into traps. The narrow tunnels meant the Ravagers couldn't use their superior numbers. While the Marines fought, Amy worked with the miners to plan an escape. She was surprised by how calm they were. We've dealt with cave-ins and equipment failures before, explained Chief Miner Rick Coleman. This is just another emergency. Amy realized that the miners were treating the Ravager attack like any other workplace crisis. They had backup plans, emergency supplies, and everyone knew their job. "We can get to the other side of the mountain through the old tunnels," Rick said. "There's a landing pad there where ships can pick us up." For the next 6 hours, Amy and her crew fought a running battle through the mining complex. They used every trick they could think of. They collapsed tunnels to block the Ravagers, used mining charges to bring down entire sections of the complex, and even flooded some areas to slow the aliens down. The most surprising thing was how well as civilians helped. Instead of panicking, they worked together like a trained military unit. Children carried supplies, adults operated equipment, and everyone followed orders without question. "Captain," Tony reported over the radio, "we're seeing something strange. The Ravagers are pulling back." Amy looked at her scanner. The alien ships were retreating from the planet. Why would they do that? Maybe they decided we're too much trouble, Pete suggested, but Amy wasn't so sure. Through the tunnel entrance, she could see council ships arriving in orbit. The main fleet had finally reached Kythera. Later, as the survivors were being evacuated, Amy overheard a conversation between two council officers. They were Vorthik, the scholarly species that looked like walking trees. "Did you see how the humans fought?" one of them asked. "Yes," the other replied. "They turned a mining operation into a military fortress in hours. They used civilian equipment as weapons and fought like they had been preparing for this their whole lives. But they're supposed to be a peaceful species. Are they? Look at how they organized the evacuation. Everyone had a job, everyone followed orders, and no one panicked. That's not normal civilian behavior." Amy pretended not to listen, but she was thinking about what the aliens had said. Were humans different from other species? She thought about the battle they had just fought. Her crew had adapted to the situation without any special training. They had seen problems and found solutions. That night, Amy sent her report to Earth and the Council. She described the battle and the evacuation, but she also included her observations about human behavior. The crew performed beyond expectations. She wrote, "They showed initiative, adaptability, and courage under fire. What impressed me most was how quickly they learned to work as a team with the civilian miners." She paused, then added, "I believe humans may have natural advantages in combat situations that we haven't fully recognized yet." 3 days later, Amy received a message from Council headquarters. "Report to Nexus Prime immediately for debriefing." When she arrived, she found herself in a room full of high-ranking Council officers. They asked her hundreds of questions about the battle, but Amy noticed they seemed most interested in how humans behaved under pressure. "Captain Foster," said Ambassador Tyschel, "your actions saved thousands of lives. But they also raise questions about human nature that we need to understand." Amy didn't know what to say. She had just done what felt right. As she left the meeting, she overheard Senior Counselor Vexstar talking to another officer. "Send observers to monitor human activities," he said. "I want to know if what we saw at Kythera is normal for their species." Amy walked back to her ship, wondering what the Council was really afraid of. Humans had just saved lives and defeated a dangerous enemy. Why did that make the aliens nervous? She would soon find out that the battle at Kythera was just the beginning. Dr. Lisa Chong sat in her office at the University of Mars, looking at the message that had just arrived. The Vorthika Collective wanted to study human history and psychology. They were offering to share their advanced knowledge in exchange for a complete understanding of how humans had developed. "This is the chance of a lifetime," Lisa said to her colleague, Professor Jim Walker. "The Vorthik have been studying civilizations for millions of years. They could teach us things we never imagined." Jim nodded, but he looked worried. "Why are they so interested in us?" We're just a young species. What could we possibly have that they want to learn about? Lisa had been wondering the same thing. The Vorthik were known throughout the galaxy as the greatest scholars and researchers. They had studied every species in the Council. Why did they suddenly want to focus on humans? 3 weeks later, a Vorthik research ship arrived at Mars. Lead scientist was Scholar Quinder, who looked like a tall tree with golden leaves. Lisa had met him briefly at the first council meeting, but now she would be working with him closely. Dr. Chang, Quinder said as they met in the university's main conference room, we are excited to begin this study. We want to understand how humans developed so quickly compared to other species. What exactly do you want to know? Lisa asked. Everything, Quinder replied. Your wars, your disasters, your achievements. We want to build a complete picture of human development. Lisa and Jim spent the next month showing the Vorthik team everything they could about human history. They started with the earliest civilizations and worked their way forward to the present day. The Vorthik researchers were particularly interested in human conflicts. They asked detailed questions about every war, every revolution, and every time. Humans had fought each other. This is unusual, Quinder said after studying the records of World War II. Most species have 1 or 2 major conflicts during their development. Humans seem to have been fighting constantly. We've had our share of wars, Jim admitted, but we've also had long periods of peace. Have you? Another Vorthik researcher asked. According to your records, humans have been involved in some form of armed conflict for 90% of your recorded history. Lisa felt uncomfortable. We've grown beyond that. The United Earth government has brought peace to our world. Yes, but you still maintain military forces, Quinder observed. Every human ship we've seen has weapons. Even your exploration vessels are armed. That's just practical, Lisa said. Space can be dangerous. The Vorthik team exchanged glances. Lisa was beginning to understand why they found humans so interesting. The next part of the study focused on human survival abilities. The Vorthik were amazed by how humans had survived and thrived in almost every environment on Earth. Your species lived through ice ages, plagues, volcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts, Quinder said. Each time, you not only survived, but became stronger. Humans are good at adapting, Jim explained. When our environment changes, we change with it. But how? Asked another researcher. Most species would have gone extinct after the first major catastrophe. Humans faced dozens of them. Lisa showed them records of human settlements in deserts, mountains, frozen wastelands, and tropical jungles. We learned to live anywhere. She said, if we couldn't change the environment, we changed ourselves. The Vorthik team was quiet for a long time. Finally, Quinder spoke. Dr. Chang, we need to ask you about something that concerns us. Your species seems to treat conflict and survival as normal parts of life. Is this accurate? Lisa thought about the question. I suppose so. We've always had to deal with challenges. It's just part of being human. But you also seem to enjoy these challenges, another researcher said. Your entertainment, your games, your sports, they all involve competition and conflict. Humans like to compete. It's fun. Fun? Quinder looked confused. You find conflict enjoyable? Not real conflict, Lisa said quickly. We like games and sports because they let us compete safely. No one gets hurt. The Vorthik researchers spent the next week studying human entertainment. They watched movies, played video games, and attended sporting events. What they found disturbed them. Every form of human entertainment involves some form of conflict, Quinder reported to his team. Your movies are about heroes fighting villains. Your games are about defeating opponents. Your sports are about one team beating another. Even your children's games involve tactical thinking, another researcher added. Hide and seek teaches concealment and hunting skills. Tag teaches pursuit and evasion. These are military skills disguised as play. Lisa had never thought about it that way. Children need to learn somehow. Games are just a way to develop skills they'll need as adults. But why do they need those particular skills? Quinder asked. Most species teach their children cooperation and harmony. Humans teach competition and strategy. The conversation was interrupted by news from Earth. There had been a natural disaster, a massive earthquake in the Pacific region. Lisa and Jim watched the news reports with growing pride. Within hours of the earthquake, rescue teams from around the world were flying to help. Military units were delivering supplies. Civilian volunteers were digging through rubble and emergency. Services were working around the clock. Look at that, Lisa said. Humans from different countries, speaking different languages, all working together to help strangers. But the Vorthic team was watching something else. They saw how quickly the response had been organized, how efficiently resources were deployed, and how well different groups worked together. This is military-level coordination, Quinder observed. How did civilian organizations respond so quickly? Jim pulled up more information about the disaster response. Every major country has emergency response plans. We practice disaster drills regularly. Schools, businesses, and families all have evacuation procedures. You practice for disasters? A Vorthic researcher asked. Of course, Lisa said. We want to be ready if something happens. The Vorthic team looked at each other with what Lisa was beginning to recognize as their version of concern. Dr. Chang, Quinder said slowly, most species hope disasters will never happen. Humans seem to assume they will happen and prepare for them. This is a very different mindset. Over the following weeks, the Vorthic team studied every aspect of human society. They looked at how cities were built, how governments worked, how businesses operated, and how families lived. What they found was a pattern. Every human institution seemed designed to handle crisis and conflict. Cities had multiple transportation routes in case some were blocked. Governments had backup systems and emergency powers. Businesses had contingency plans and risk management strategies. Even families had emergency supplies and meeting places. It's like your entire civilization is designed for survival, Quinder said during one of their final meetings. Is that bad? Lisa asked. Not bad, Quinder replied. Just different. Most species build their civilizations for comfort and beauty. Humans build for survival and efficiency. The Vorthic team spent their last week on Mars writing their final report. Lisa and Jim were invited to review it before it was sent to the council. Reading the report was a shock. The Vorthic had concluded that humans were not a normal species. They had evolved specifically for survival in hostile environments, and this had shaped every aspect of human culture. According to our analysis, the report said, humans do not learn to fight. They learn to control their fighting instincts. They are not peaceful beings who sometimes go to war. They are warriors who have learned to live in peace. The report went on to explain that human intelligence had developed primarily for tactical thinking. Humans were exceptionally good at identifying threats, analyzing resources, and developing strategies. These skills made them effective in both war and peace. The most concerning finding, the report continued, is that humans seem to be unconsciously preparing for conflicts that have not yet occurred. Every aspect of their society includes preparations for emergency situations. Lisa put down the report and looked at Jim. Do you think they're right? Jim was quiet for a moment. I think about the earthquake response we watched. No one had to tell people what to do. Everyone just knew. We've been preparing for disasters our whole lives without even realizing it. But is that a bad thing? Lisa asked. The Vorthic seem to think it makes us dangerous. Jim replied. A week later, Lisa received a message from Scholar Quinder. The Vorthik report had been presented to the council, and it had caused quite a stir. Dr. Chong, the message said, your species is remarkable. You have evolved to thrive in conditions that would destroy most civilizations. This makes you valuable allies, but also concerning neighbors. Lisa deleted the message and looked out her window at the red sky of Mars. Humans had turned a dead planet into a thriving world in just a few centuries. Maybe the Vorthik were right. Maybe humans were different, but she couldn't help wondering what the council planned to do with this information. Would they welcome humanity as a valuable addition to their civilization? Or would they see humans as a threat that needed to be contained? The answer would come sooner than she expected. Commander Pete Hughes had been chosen for the most important diplomatic mission in human history. The Ethereal Collective, the oldest and most mysterious members of the Galactic Council, had requested a meeting with humanity. They wanted to understand human consciousness itself. Pete stood on the bridge of the UEC Diplomat as they approached the ethereal home system. Unlike other council worlds, this system had no planets. Instead, massive structures of pure energy floated in space, shifting and changing like living things. Captain, we're receiving a communication, said Lieutenant Nancy White from the communications station, but it's not coming through our radio equipment. Pete felt a strange tingling in his mind. Words appeared in his thoughts, but they weren't his own words. Welcome, human. I am the one you may call Luminance. We have been waiting to meet you. Pete looked around the bridge. His crew members were all touching their heads, clearly experiencing the same thing. Are you talking directly to our minds? Pete asked aloud. Yes, we are beings of pure energy and thought. Physical communication is difficult for us. We hope this does not disturb you. Pete was amazed. The ethereals had existed for millions of years, long before most other species had even developed intelligence. They were said to have knowledge of the entire galaxy's history. We are honored by your invitation, Pete said. What would you like to know about humanity? Everything, Luminance replied. But first, we would like to experience human consciousness directly. Would you permit a mind meld? Pete had read about ethereal mind melds in the briefing materials. It was supposed to be completely safe, allowing the ethereals to understand how other species thought and felt. I agree, Pete said. The experience was unlike anything Pete had ever imagined. He felt his consciousness expanding, connecting with something vast and ancient. Luminance was inside his mind, but not intrusively. It felt like having a wise friend. Looking over his shoulder. Fascinating, Luminance said. Your mind is very different from what we expected. Different how? Pete asked. You are constantly alert. Even now, in this peaceful moment, part of your consciousness is scanning for threats and planning responses to potential dangers. Pete hadn't realized he was doing that, but now that Luminance mentioned it, he could feel it. He was automatically cataloging the strengths and weaknesses of the ethereal structures, thinking about escape routes, and considering how his ship's weapons might affect beings of pure energy. This is not conscious behavior, Luminance observed. Your mind does. This automatically. Is that bad? Pete asked. Not bad. Just unexpected. Most species think about immediate concerns: food, shelter, social relationships. You think about survival scenarios that may never occur. Luminance began exploring Pete's memories. The ethereal experienced Pete's childhood, his training at the Space Academy, and his years serving on various ships. With each memory, Luminance seemed more surprised. Your education is remarkable, Luminance said. You were taught history, science, and literature. But you were also taught strategy, tactics, and combat skills. Even your civilian education included military training. Pete remembered his school years. Everyone had to take classes in emergency procedures, basic first aid, and survival skills? He had thought this was normal. Are you saying other species don't learn these things? Pete asked. Most species learn cooperation and harmony. They study art, philosophy, and peaceful sciences. Military training is reserved for a small warrior class. Luminance continued exploring Pete's memories, focusing on his military service. The ethereal experienced battles Pete had fought, decisions he had made, and the training that had prepared him for command. This is extraordinary, Luminance said. You have been preparing for galactic-scale warfare since you were a child, yet you are not aware of it. We prepare for emergencies, Pete said. That's just common sense. But look at your preparation. You know the technical specifications of every Council species technology. You have studied their military capabilities, their resource limitations, and their strategic weaknesses. Why? Pete thought about it. Every ship captain learns about the species they might encounter. It's part of our training. But why do you need to know their weaknesses? You are supposed to be allies. Pete was quiet. For a moment. I guess we like to be prepared for anything. Luminance showed Pete a different perspective, how other species viewed the galaxy. They saw it as a peaceful place where different civilizations cooperated and shared knowledge. They built their societies for comfort and beauty, not for survival and efficiency. Your species sees the galaxy as a dangerous place that requires constant vigilance, Luminance observed. Every human we have encountered thinks this way. The mind meld continued for hours. Luminance explored not just Pete's memories, but his instincts and unconscious behaviors. The ethereal was particularly interested in how Pete's mind worked. During crisis situations, when you face a problem, your mind immediately begins generating multiple solutions, Luminance noted. You consider best-case scenarios, worst-case scenarios, and everything in between. This is not normal thinking. How? Do other species solve problems? Pete asked. They identify the most likely solution and pursue it. If it fails, they try another approach. You prepare for failure before you even begin. Pete was joined in the mind meld by Marine Captain Beth Sullivan, who had been assigned to his diplomatic team. Luminance was even more fascinated by her consciousness. Captain Sullivan, your mind is remarkable, Luminance said. You have automatically identified 17 different ways to neutralize each Council species technology. You have done this without conscious thought. Beth was surprised. I don't remember doing that. You have been doing it since you arrived. At this system, your mind catalogs threats and develops countermeasures as naturally as other species breathe. Luminance showed them both something that shocked them. Through the ethereal's ancient memories, they saw how other species had developed. Every other civilization had gone through a peaceful phase early in their development, focusing on art, philosophy, and cooperation. Humans never had this peaceful phase, Luminance explained. Your entire development was shaped by conflict and survival pressure. You learned to make art and music, but you also learned to fight. You developed philosophy and science, but you also developed strategy and tactics. Pete began to understand what made humans different. We never stopped being warriors. We just learned to be other things too. Exactly. And this has shaped your entire civilization. Your cities are built like fortresses. Your governments are structured like military organizations. Your businesses operate like logistics networks. Even your families function like small military units. The revelation was disturbing. Pete had always thought of humanity as a peaceful species that had learned to defend itself. Now he realized that humans were warriors who had learned to be peaceful. Is this why the Council is worried about us? Pete asked. The Council fears what humans might become, Luminance replied. You are still a young species, but you are already more militarily capable than civilizations twice your age. What will you be like in 1,000 years? Luminance showed them the true scope of human military preparation. Every human colony was positioned with defensive considerations. Every trade route was planned to support military logistics. Every scientific research project had potential military applications. You are preparing for a war that has not yet begun, Luminance said, and you are doing it unconsciously. But we want peace, Beth protested. Humans don't want to conquer the galaxy. We know, Luminance replied. That is what makes you so unusual. You are a warrior species that chooses peace, but you are still warriors. The mind meld revealed something else that shocked Pete. Humans had been unconsciously analyzing the Galactic Council since first contact, looking for weaknesses and potential threats. Every human diplomat, trader, and explorer had been gathering intelligence without realizing it. You have been mapping our defenses, studying our technology, and analyzing our political structures, Luminance said. Not because you plan to attack U.S., but because it is your nature to understand potential battlefields. Pete felt embarrassed. We don't mean to be threatening. You are not threatening, Luminance assured him. You are prepared. There is a difference. The mind meld continued. As Luminance explored deeper into human consciousness, the ethereal was particularly interested in how humans viewed the future. Your species plans centuries ahead, Luminance observed. Other species plan for their own lifetimes, perhaps their children's lifetimes. Humans plan for scenarios that might happen long after you are dead. Pete realized this was true. Human governments had 1,000-year plans. Scientists worked on projects that wouldn't be completed for generations. Military strategists prepared for conflicts that might never occur. Why do you do this? Luminance asked. Because someone has to, Pete said. If we don't plan for the future, who will? Most species trust that the future will take care of itself. That seems dangerous, Beth said. What if something goes wrong? Luminance was quiet for a long moment. This is the fundamental difference. Other species have faith in the universe. Humans have faith only in themselves. The ethereal began sharing some of its own memories with Pete and Beth. They saw the rise and fall of countless civilizations over M. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of the U.E.S. Defiance, watching the long-range sensors with growing concern. The darkness that the ethereals had warned about was no longer at the edge of the galaxy. It was here. Admiral, we're getting reports from the outer systems, said Captain Rick Coleman. Entire star systems are just disappearing. Kate looked at the tactical display. Red zones marked areas where council worlds had gone silent. The pattern was clear. Something was moving through the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. What? Do our scouts report? Kate asked. Commander Nancy White stepped forward. The few ships that escaped describe something they're calling the Void Swarm. It's not like the Ravagers we faced before. These things don't just destroy civilizations. They erase them completely. Kate had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. Ever since the ethereal warning, humanity had been quietly getting ready for a war that most of the galaxy didn't believe would come. Have you implemented Plan Terra? She asked. Yes, Admiral. All human colonies have been notified. Emergency. Protocols are in effect. Plan Terra was humanity's ultimate survival strategy. Every human settlement, every ship, every outpost had been designed with one goal in mind: to survive the kind of threat that could destroy entire civilizations. The communication system crackled to life. It was Ambassador Elena Rodriguez calling. From Nexus Prime. Admiral Phillips, the Council is in emergency session. They're requesting immediate military assistance from all member species. Kate wasn't surprised. The Council's traditional defense strategies were designed for wars between civilizations, not for something that could erase entire star systems. What's the situation at Nexus Prime? Kate asked. Panic, Elena replied honestly. The Council species have never faced anything like this. Their fleets are powerful, but they're built for peacekeeping, not for survival warfare. Kate activated the ship's communication system. This is Admiral Phillips to all human forces. Operation Deep Strike is now in effect. All units are to implement emergency protocols immediately. Across human space, the response was immediate. Military bases that had been disguised as research stations revealed their true nature. Cargo ships opened hidden weapon compartments. Civilian colonies activated defense, systems that had been secretly installed over decades. The first major battle occurred at the Proxima system, where a human mining colony encountered the leading edge of the Void Swarm. Captain Beth Sullivan commanded the defense, and what she found shocked even her. Admiral, these things aren't ships, Beth reported over the communication link. They're more like living darkness. Our weapons pass right through them. Kate had expected this. The intelligence reports from ethereal long-range sensors had suggested that conventional weapons would be useless. Implement Protocol 7, Kate ordered. Protocol 7 was something only humans had developed. Instead of trying to fight the Void Swarm directly, they would use the galaxy itself as a weapon. Captain Sullivan received her orders and couldn't help but smile grimly. This was the kind of impossible situation that humans had been unconsciously preparing for their entire history. All ships, prepare for stellar manipulation, Beth ordered. What happened next would have been considered impossible by any other species. The human fleet positioned themselves around Proxima Star and began using their ship's gravity generators to destabilize it. Captain, are you planning to make the star go supernova? Asked her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Brooks. Not exactly, Beth replied. We're going to turn it into a weapon. A human fleet worked with precision that amazed even themselves. They had never practiced this exact maneuver, but their training in improvisation and adaptation served them. Well, within hours, they had created a controlled stellar flare that swept through the system. The Void Swarm entities that had seemed invulnerable to conventional weapons were disrupted by the intense stellar radiation. They didn't die. It was unclear if they could die, but they retreated. Admiral Phillips, Beth reported, stellar manipulation appears to be effective. The Void Swarm is pulling back from Proxima. Kate felt a moment of satisfaction, but she knew this was just the beginning. The enemy would adapt, just as they always did. Over the next weeks, the war spread across the galaxy. Council species that had maintained peace for thousands of years found themselves fighting for their very existence. Their fleets, designed for exploration and diplomacy, were quickly overwhelmed. But the human response was different. Every human ship, colony, and outpost seemed to transform overnight from peaceful civilian installations into military bases. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity revealed the true extent of their preparations. How long had they been preparing for this? Asked Scholar Quinder of the Vorthic as he watched human forces coordinate their defense. Since the day they joined the Council, replied Ambassador Tyschel. Maybe since the day they first looked up at the stars. The most shocking revelation came when Admiral Phillips revealed the full scope of Plan Terra. Every human exploration mission had been gathering intelligence about stellar mechanics, gravitational fields, and cosmic phenomena that could be weaponized. Every trade route had been planned to support military logistics. Every diplomatic contact had included analysis of potential battlefield conditions. You've been preparing to fight a galactic war since first contact, Senior Counselor Vex Tar said during an emergency war council meeting. We've been preparing to survive whatever we might encounter, Kate replied. It's what humans do. The turning point came when the Void Swarm reached the core systems of the galaxy. The ancient worlds where civilization had first begun were under direct assault. The Council's most important planets were falling one by one. "Admiral," Commander White reported, "Nexus Prime is requesting immediate evacuation assistance. They estimate 12 hours before the Void Swarm reaches the capital." Kate looked at the tactical display. Nexus Prime was the heart of galactic civilization. If it fell, the Council would collapse and every species would be fighting alone. "Signal all human fleets," Kate ordered. "We're making our stand at Nexus Prime." What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships from dozens of species converged on the Nexus system. But it was the human fleet that took command of the battle. Admiral Phillips didn't just coordinate the defense. She turned the entire star system into a fortress. Human engineering teams worked with alien scientists to create weapons from asteroids, navigation hazards from gas clouds, and communication networks from the system's natural electromagnetic fields. "How are they doing this?" asked an amazed ethereal observer. "They're treating the entire system like a single battlefield," Luminance replied. "Every planet, every moon, every piece of space debris is part of their strategy." The battle raged. For days, the Void Swarm seemed endless, pouring into the system like a dark tide. Council species fought bravely, but it was clear they were losing. Then Kate Phillips made a decision that would be remembered for thousands of years. "All human vessels, implement Final Protocol," she ordered. Final Protocol was humanity's ultimate weapon, not a device or a ship, but a strategy. Every human in the galaxy would work together as a single organism, coordinating their actions across impossible distances. Human colonies that were light years away began destabilizing stars in carefully calculated sequences. The resulting chain reaction of supernovas created a wall of stellar radiation that swept across the galaxy, disrupting Void Swarm entities wherever they encountered them. The plan worked, but at a terrible cost. Hundreds of systems were sterilized by the stellar radiation. Billions of beings were evacuated to safety, but entire worlds were lost forever. "You destroyed half the galaxy to save the other half," Vextar said when the battle was over. "We saved what we could," Kate replied. "Sometimes that's all you can do." In the aftermath of the war, the galaxy was forever changed. The surviving Council species looked at humanity with a mixture of gratitude and fear. They had been saved, but they had also seen what humans were truly capable of. "Now we understand the warning we should have heeded," Tyshal said during the post-war reconstruction meetings. "Humans are not a species that occasionally goes to war. They are a species that occasionally takes breaks from being ready for war." The new galactic treaty reflected this understanding. Humanity was given responsibility for galactic defense, while other species focused on rebuilding and recovery. It was an arrangement that suited everyone. The children of various Council species now played together on restored worlds, while human children naturally organized the games into tactical exercises. It wasn't aggression. It was simply human. Nature dot, and in the deep space monitoring stations that humans had quietly established throughout the galaxy, sensors continued to watch for new threats. Because humans had learned the most important lesson of all, the universe was vast and dangerous, and someone always had to be ready. The galaxy was at peace, but it was a peace protected by those who never forgot how to fight.